Hello and welcome. You're watching Security Scan and I'm Vishal Dahiya. This week we're going to talk about India's maritime security and Indo-Pacific, and to understand these two concepts much better, what exactly is happening on the ground, what are the various strategies being adopted and what are the challenges there to further elaborate on all these aspects. We have with us a distinguished panel of guests. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with retired Commander Abhijit Singh. He is head of the Maritime Policy Initiative at ORF. We are also joined by Mr. Ajay Banerjee, defense correspondent with the Tribune. Welcome, both of you gentlemen, to Security Scan. Let me begin with you, Commander Abhijit, and let's start by understanding, India's maritime security policy here before we move on to Indo-Pacific.
As far as the maritime security is concerned, our real approach to maritime security is to look at the seas in three concentric circles. There's the coastal areas that are very important for us. And, ever since 26/11 incident in Mumbai, coastal security has been getting a lot of importance. But then there's the security in what they call the near seas. That's the near neighborhood, and perhaps even to a degree, the extended neighborhood in the Indian Ocean region. And that is, again, an area where over recent years, since at least 2014-15, when Prime Minister Modi first propounded the Sagar strategy, the security and growth for all strategy, that is the time since when we've been giving a lot of importance also to our near seas and our neighborhood, the near neighborhood and the extended neighborhood. But then there is a third region, and that's one of the regions that you just named, which is called the Indo-Pacific. And that actually takes into account not just India's interest in the Indian Ocean region, but also in the Pacific region. So increasingly, we have seen greater forays in the Pacific. We've been doing more exercises with Pacific nations. We know of the fact that, just over the past about a year or two, our interactions with Quad countries, which is the US, Japan, Australia, have grown. We've done a Quad naval exercise in the Indian Ocean. We have visited the Pacific on one or two occasions. Of course, the thrust of our endeavors remains in the Indian Ocean region, but there is this increasing sense that India is willing to play a part in the broader framework of security, which is the Indo-Pacific region. And then, more importantly, and this is where I would like to flag the importance of non-traditional security. India is also looking at ways in which we can, pivot a little bit from traditional security that's intended more at countering China to also look at issues like, say, HADR, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, to look at environmental security, to look at issues like blue economy, to look at areas like, tourism, IUU fishing, which is illegal fishing, and many such areas. So again, India is again trying to cooperate with some of the Pacific nations. There is this proposal that Prime Minister Modi came up with just about 2 years ago at the East Asia Summit. It was called the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative.
IPOI.
And, IPOI, absolutely. And IPOI essentially has 7 pillars. And apart from the maritime security pillar, which is both about traditional, non-traditional, the rest of the areas are all about looking into areas like, HADR, humanitarian assistance, trade and investment, and as I mentioned, areas like, looking at ways in which we can improve our cooperation in other forms of non-traditional security, including conservation efforts in the oceans. So I think that is what this security, our understanding, has come to, that it has 2 dimensions: the traditional dimension, which is more aimed at maritime security, aimed at traditional rivals, and then there's the non-traditional aspect that we are increasingly beginning to focus on.
Okay. Ajay, I'd like to bring you in here. Your views there on all these elements of national, maritime security policy from India's perspective, the significance out there, and the way we have to play out these 2 parts, traditional and non-traditional.
See, first of all, India sits on the cusp of greatness. It could go either way. Now, India has already decided, I believe, the Foreign Minister S. Jaishankar's book very vividly explains that India will have its own path in the Committee of Nations. It will not align itself with either US or with China. Now, this is a very significant statement. These two are big. America is a big maritime power. and China intends to be a big maritime power. It is copying the US in all manners and all matters. And China will soon be operating in the Indian Ocean. India has made it very clear that its maritime policy will be independent of everybody. It's a very, very important step that we are about to take. Our policy also indicates that we will be looking at a larger navy, a greater role at sea, and also surveillance at sea. We are also looking at kind of a grouping at sea, which includes information sharing. And information sharing at the moment is only about commercial shipping. But I think very soon we should be pushing for military shipping, also information to be shared. That means if a Chinese warship is transiting an area and the US or the Japanese or the Australians pick it out, they could inform India. And this I'm talking in reference to the Quad, that is quadrilateral, as Commodore Abhijit explained, the India, Japan, US, and Australia. Now, we as India have to see that where do we come about from now? Can we be seen as an ally of the US? I don't think so. We will be an ally of the US in real terms, like means the US already is talking that India will come about slowly, that there is destiny linked to India-US alliance. But at the moment, the pace has to be at India's pace, not at the pace that US wants. And I'm talking about the maritime policy. Our maritime policy will include, very importantly, countries east of us, Vietnam, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore. They're very important for the Indian context, Vishal, and these are the policy pillars which we tend to see in the next 20 years from now.
Commander Abhijit, if you have to understand these concepts much more clear, and you referred to various aspects vis-a-vis Indo-Pacific, but to elaborate it further, in terms of why Indo-Pacific is so strategically important to us, and from the maritime policy perspective as well. Quad initiative is something which has been talked about a lot these days. We have had Quad Leaders Summit as well with a clear focus on how to move about vis-a-vis Indo-Pacific.
So, with regard to the Indo-Pacific, I'm going to just say this, that first of all, there is this impression about the Indo-Pacific that it's somehow intended at containing China, which is not true. The Raisina dialogue, the foreign minister, Mr. Jaishankar, said that India sees the concept of the Indo-Pacific as a seamless integrated space. And what he meant by that is that what we're actually looking at is to find avenues for cooperation with countries that are both in the Indian Ocean and the Pacific. And there is no harm in doing that. And let's remember that one of the reasons why the Indo-Pacific is more into focus this year is because of the pandemic. The pandemic forms the background for most of the discussions that are now happening over the Indo-Pacific, because there is this growing sense that resources in all of these countries in the region have shrunk, and that we increasingly need to be able to cooperate with each other and optimize our capabilities, harness each other's strengths to do what is needed in the region and provide the security goods. And therefore, a lot of focus now is on looking at this inclusive dimension of the Indo-Pacific. So till some time back, it could be argued that if the US had, what you would call a confrontational strategy towards the US, towards China, our strategy was more, I would say, conciliatory. Because, if you remember when Prime Minister Modi went to Shangri-La back in 2016, and he gave that speech in which he said that, inclusivity is the hallmark of India's approach to the Indo-Pacific strategy. And that meant that there had to be space for all of the partners in the region, all of the countries in the region, to take part in the Indo-Pacific concept. So we were at a degree of variance with what the Americans were saying. Now what we have seen is that there is a slight shift that has come into the Indo-Pacific understanding, wherein we want to be able to work with America. We want to be able to work with Europe, that is increasingly looking towards the Indo-Pacific. As you know, the UK, Germany, Netherlands, and some other country, even NATO, they are all looking at the Indo-Pacific region with great interest. And some of these countries have even come up with strategies for the region. So India is looking at being able to harness the capabilities, harness the strengths of some of these partners to do what is needed in the region, both, as I said, in security terms and in non-security terms. But that does not mean that this is simply intended to counter China. If China will be aggressive, part of this is going to be to counter China. But they're saying that there has to be space for all the partners in the region to come together and deliver the security goods, because now's the time in the post-pandemic world, in an era that we need to be looking at ways in which we can get our act together comprehensively in the space.
Okay, and how far do you think, Commander Abhijit, we've been able to go ahead and achieve those, goals which you're talking about, which we set for ourselves vis-a-vis Indo-Pacific?
Look, I mean, this is an interesting question you ask. You see, one of the things is that while we are on the same page as far as the US is concerned, and I might argue even the West is concerned, Europe, Australia, Japan, we are all have a similar assessment of the Indo-Pacific region. The problem really is that some of the countries in ASEAN aren't quite buying into the idea of the Indo-Pacific because China is a skeptic. And China has made it very clear that when it is going to cooperate with ASEAN, it does not want even a mention of the term Indo-Pacific, because it seems that the term Indo-Pacific actually is a way of implicating China, is a way of addressing a China containment strategy. And so therefore, when we want ASEAN to cooperate in the Indo-Pacific, there are few countries that are a bit hesitant. So the discussions that we are having now in the Indo-Pacific region and between the big powers is to make sure that apart from the Quad, which looks like a big power, group that is meant to counter China, we are also looking at minilaterals like, India, Japan, France, like India, Australia, France. Some of these minilaterals that can deal with ASEAN countries and have greater buy-in for the concept of the Indo-Pacific among some of these countries. So that's a work in progress. We are making some headway, but I think there's still some time to go before we can say that we have started to achieve our objectives.
Okay, fair enough. It's a work in progress, pretty much clearly visible out there as well. Ajay, your views there on the strategic importance, strategic significance of Indo-Pacific and the contours of India's Indo-Pacific strategy?
Well, Vishal, first of all, in my opinion, there is a very clear thing at the moment which is emerging over the Indo-Pacific, and I will refer to Quad again. By Quad, I mean an extended Quad now. I'm referring to an extended Quad. That will be France, South Korea, New Zealand, and even England, which are UK rather, which are wanting to keen to come here. So we could see an expansion of the Quad, which also means that the countries could be cooperating very closely on cyber, on space assets, and keep in mind, very importantly, information sharing. That means a common platform could be doing duty somewhere and providing a real-time picture to all these countries for their assessment on the ground. Now, this is the kind of strategy that will save some money to these people. Resources are scarce, and looking at the Indo-Pacific from India right up to Hawaii is a huge, huge territory. That means we are talking in terms of something like 30 or 25 Indias in that area. And we are talking of an area which sees a lot of earthquakes, a lot of volcanoes, a lot of HADR operations are needed. Can one country provide it? No. So there will have to be cooperation militarily. There have to be cooperation in space, in this domain of cyber, and also in the domain of manufacturing. That means defense equipment manufacturing. Say if Australia makes something or Japan makes something, why should India be buying from a third source? Why should Australia or India or Japan not get together and do it together in one go for their three countries? For example, if Australia is making something which can be done in India, or India is making something, an artillery gun, for example, or a fighter jet, can it be improved with Japanese and Australian Doha? That is the kind of thing in cooperation, I think, will be the possibility of India's Indo-Pacific strategy. And I'm referring to the Quad again and again, and the Quad, extended Quad again and again, because the rest of the countries, as Commander Abhijit pointed out, may not be that keen, fearing China as a prisoner. That includes the ASEAN countries and other smaller countries who may not be so keen to look into this Quad or this Indo-Pacific construct. So it has to be the big countries who will have to come forward and kind of stitch together an alliance which works in interest of the entire global commons. Because at the moment, the Communist Party of China is trying to influence its opinion on the world, its rule or world or law in the world, its law of sea in the world, which may not be acceptable in democracies. That's what I want to say, Vishal.
Okay, and what do you think, Ajay, are the tangible outcomes of this strategy which India has adopted vis-a-vis Indo-Pacific? If you're looking at this particular region and all those aspects which both of you are mentioning.
One, first of all, Vishal, India will have to do a very tightrope walk between its old ally called Russia, earlier USSR, and the US. Russia is not very easy with the Quad or the word Quad. And Russia is not very comfortable with the alliance of India going with the US alliance. That is for Russia to decide, but I think India has made it very clear that our alliance with Russia and our alliance with the US-led alliance is separate from each other. They stand as separate verticals. And when the US Secretary of Defense, General Austin, visited India in March, he spoke about countries not leaning onto Russia. India is very categorical that it will continue to lean onto Russia. And the US policymakers in Washington, D.C., I'm told, realize that India's dependence on Russia will continue for long, and they cannot cut the umbilical cord, as they say, with Russia. So US and Russia will be the two things which India will have to find balance. That is India's balance to maintain. And I'm sure India will do that because it has done in the past 20, 30 years. It has balanced US and Russia very well in its relations. Now it is also balancing its relations with China. The US believes that India has got a disastrous relationship with China. That is the US perception. But again, US sits miles away and China is our immediate neighbor. We have an unresolved border. So we have to see, India has to see its strategy, how it moves ahead with the Chinese strategy, the Indo-Pacific strategy. It is all built into one, and the goal is to make India stand on its own feet. That's how I see it, Vishal.
Okay, that's quite an interesting aspect out there, Commander Abhijit. That's the Russia angle, as Ajay is pointing out. You were earlier saying that Indo-Pacific should not be seen at all from the entire China perspective. But as Ajay is saying, India also needs to do that tightrope walk vis-a-vis its old ally Russia when we're talking about the Quad initiative there.
Well, I can't overemphasize the Russia point anymore. And I think Ajay is absolutely right about the fact that Russia poses a very big challenge. In fact, it's a conundrum that we simply don't have any easy answers to. The fact of the matter is that the Russians have made it amply clear that they are not willing to accept the Indo-Pacific in any form. Sergei Lavrov, who's the foreign minister of Russia, not on one occasion, but at least on 3 occasions, including the Raisina last year, clearly flagged Russian reservations about the Indo-Pacific strategy because they're very concerned about the fact that the US is targeting not just China. The real adversary, as far as the US is concerned, is actually Russia. The Chinese are simply, as they call it, competitors. And if NATO and the US are both going to be completely focused on Russia, there's absolutely no way the Russians are going to come to accept the Indo-Pacific concept. Now, our dilemma here is that we're tilting towards the US. There's no denying the fact that just over the past 2 years, even though we continue to buy a lot of defense equipment from Russia, it is the Americans that are clearly our, emerging partners as far as India is concerned, and a lot of our discussions with regard to maritime security, strategic security in the Indo-Pacific region actually happen with the Americans, and the Americans now are saying that if you're going to go ahead and keep buying Russian equipment like the S-400 that we've in a manner of speaking already got from the Russians, they are going to impose sanctions on India, or India runs the risk of American sanctions. So that means that now we are forced with a sort of forced choice to make between an old ally and a new ally. And I have no answers to where we are going to go from here. I think we have signaled to the Russians that we are not willing to cut the umbilical cord, as Ajay very rightly puts it. But I don't think the Russians are very convinced. The fact that, the foreign minister of Russia was in Pakistan recently and has promised a lot of defense aid to Pakistan shows that the Russians are trying to signal to us that we are getting too close to the Americans. I think the point that needs to be made is one that the naval chief, Admiral KV Singh, made today at the Raisina, which is that India appreciates more than perhaps any other country that there is a blurring of lines in the Indo-Pacific region between traditional and non-traditional challenges. And that a lot of this blurring of lines is happening because of the behavior of China in the manner in which they have been, getting aggressive with their neighbors. They've been using gray zone activity. Some of them have even used cyber warfare. So he's saying that basically, if this is going to be the behavior of the Chinese in that region, India is going to have to take some initiative to make sure that the region is not threatened by Chinese aggression. He didn't go so far as to say that we will do something against China, but he said that we are going to somehow preserve India's interests in the Indian Ocean region, including, combining with our partners to do what needs to be done. So I think the focus of the discussion more than Russia at this point should be China, because that's the country that a lot of countries in the Indo-Pacific region, including ASEAN, are actually focused on.
Okay, fair enough. That is one aspect which obviously all of us will keep a close watch on, which is not only the Chinese angle but also the Russian angle there. But one more thing, the last to Ajay here is when we're talking about the maritime security challenges, there are various aspects which are being talked about. There are various institutions or structures which have been talked about to be put in place. One such is the National Maritime Commission, which we are hearing that is soon likely to get the approval. So if we have to understand, the importance of bodies like these, apex bodies like National Maritime Commission, what's the significance here, Ajay?
Very important. It should have been done two decades ago, or rather 3 decades ago, because slowly we are realizing that we are a maritime power of some significance, especially on both flanks having the sea, or both coasts having the sea. This commission will kind of bring in a kind of uniformity in operations. At the moment, there are around 12, 13 agencies which are looking at national maritime policies. Of course, the Navy is the apex body, but there is no one apex. As we say, there is no one apex signaling from the top that this is what is need to be done. Policy making at the national maritime level. Now, if we talk about national maritime policy levels, that would include fishing. That's very important in our context because we do billions of dollars worth of trade of fishing every year. So fishing is not to be taken non-seriously; it's to be taken very seriously. Our security of our assets at the coast, which includes some strategic assets of space and also oil sector, that is also will be part of the National Maritime Commission. How do we operate at sea? What is the maritime police to be doing? What is the Coast Guard to be doing? What is the Navy to be doing? It's a structure which is set up. The Navy was made the apex body after the Mumbai attacks in 2008. But since then, there has to be some formalization as we grow as a power in maritime domain. We are almost a 170 ship Navy and another 100 ship odd Coast Guard and some maritime boats. And we have got around 3 million fishing vessels and all that stuff. And we still don't have AIS transponders. That means which can identify all the boats at sea. We are still lacking in that. This is 13 years after Mumbai attacks. This is still yet to be done because there is still a pilot project town and which has not been completed because who will pay for these transponders? They're expensive equipment. All this will be covered by the National Maritime Commission. How it is to be done, when it is to be done, which country do we talk to, what is the sea route for oil coming, what is the sea route for further exploration, what is the fishing possibility, how space will be dominated. All this will be part of the National Maritime Commission. It is a good step, Vishal. Should have been done 3 decades ago.
Okay, quick comment from you, Abhijit, there on the importance, significance of organizations or bodies like National Maritime Commission to be put in place.
Look, the National Maritime Commission is going to be really important. Ajay is right that this is something that should have happened many, many years ago, and especially after 2611, that was the right time for us to go for this. I think one of the problems of maritime security has been coordination between different agencies. The fact is that there's at least about 15 agencies that are involved in maritime security today. And I talk about coastal maritime security. Apart from the Navy and the Coast Guard, there's the Customs, and then there's other agencies also that are involved in providing security, like the police, Ministry of even Earth Sciences is in some ways involved. So how does one coordinate so many agencies? How does one take care of the requirements of so many agencies? You need one central coordinating, a coordinating node, a central node, and that node I think is going to be now the NMA or the NMC. That's going to be headed by a national coordinator, and he's going to have quite a job to do because it's not going to be easy to get all of these agencies onto one page. But I think this is a move in the right direction. And if we do this, one of the things that might stop happening is what happened a couple of days back when a U.S. warship passed through Indian EEZs and issued a statement saying that we have passed through your waters without actually informing Indian authorities. That did not go down quite too well. There was a big furor. In case there would have been a coordinator, perhaps they would have taken care of this kind of contingency. So I would say that it's a move in the right direction. Of course, only once we have someone in charge will we really know about what are the exact challenges that that person is going to face in getting that whole organization to start moving as required.
Indeed, there it is, all about the maritime security and Indo-Pacific. Thank you so much, Commander Abhijit, as well as Ajay Banerjee, for sharing your views and insight with us and our viewers on this very important aspect of India's maritime security. We'll come back again next week with a different topic. Till then, keep watching. Thank you.